I often refer to Back to the Future as one of the few movies that I've ever seen that has a perfect literary narrative. Something too many movies struggle with these days. I usually use it as an example on other Deconstructing the Narrative videos, but I've never actually done a Deconstructing the Narrative video on Back to the Future. So I am today. This is the only time a Deconstructing the Narrative video will start with the score, which is a perfect 100% rating. But I'll break down why that is. So let's get started. We start with the introduction. The purpose of the introduction in any given story is to get the audience acquainted with the world and the main players throughout. Back to the Future, and actually a lot of time-specific films, do the same exact thing. They introduce you to Marty McFly and Doc, obviously. But it's also important to note that the film introduces you to George McFly, Mama McFly, Marty's girlfriend, and Biff, all before anything big happens. This is pretty darn important because you need to know who they are later when they show up in the past. The introduction is also pretty darn important in dealing with introducing the audience to the general atmosphere of the film. And that's something that this movie was always really good at, thanks to people like Michael J. Fox and Christopher Lloyd. So ultimately, that's why the introduction gets full points across the board. Next, we take a look at the initial inequity. This is something that essentially changes the world. It changes everything that was once normal for our characters, but no longer is. It's something that every character in the movie or story can knowingly or unknowingly provide some sort of perspective to. And in Back to the Future, it's obviously the butterfly stepping philosophy of time travel itself. Marty was never supposed to go back in time, obviously. He certainly wasn't supposed to screw up his parents meeting and falling in love, but this is what he did. And so the trajectory for everybody's life as they knew it is now all out of whack. They don't know this right off the bat, of course, but it's true. So the initial inequity is time travel. Next is the story goal and the obstacles. So we must now look at how the protagonist, whoever that is supposed to fix the problem at hand, which we've already decided is time travel. How do we fix that? Well, we can't just jump back into a time machine, go back to the future, forgetting it all happened. No, we can't, because the movie would be done and it would be boring. But also, the time machine itself is fried, and they have to wait until that lightning storm occurs in order to use the power of the lightning to send the time machine back. And in the process, Marty has to fix his parents' falling in love problem, which I'll talk about that in a second, but that operates as the obstacles that must be overcome before the story goal can be met. So this is perfect points. Now we talk about story consequence. This is the element of the narrative that answers the question, why does this all have to happen now? Why can't we just wait a day or two? Or a year? What's stopping us? Why the rush? 2 reasons. The lightning strike is at a very specific time and location, but also if they don't, Marty ceases to exist. They have to do this now. This is one of the most obvious things out there. Now we have to ask the question, who's the protagonist? This is someone that is trying to achieve the story goal of fixing time travel problem, and the way that you find that out, Marty or Doc, since they're both trying to do it, is that one of them believes in it so deeply that they're willing to risk everything to get it done, including their own life. The answer, obviously, here is Doc Brown. Marty's doing everything that Doc wants, and even when he wants to tell Doc about the future, past Doc tells him no because he believes so deeply in following a certain path in life. He's the protagonist through and through, which makes Marty McFly the main character. The difference between the main character and the protagonist is that the main character serves as the emotional link to the audience. They often have the most screen time, and they're the character that you care about the most. Are they sometimes also the protagonist? Yeah, that's when they are the literary hero of a film. But in this instance, they are 2 separate characters. Doc is the protagonist, Marty is the main character. I can further back up that claim by saying a main character has their own personal journey and personal goal that they alone must go through and complete before the story goal, fixed time travel, can be met. For Marty, that's playing Cupid a little bit and getting his parents to get back together. Once he can do that, then narratively, they can finally do it and get back to the future. But that main character through line had to be met first. Next is the influence character, which is somebody that essentially challenges the way that the main character thinks and sees the world. This is Doc. Though I would say that that's more obvious in the sequel where Marty wants to use future info for personal gain and Doc's like, dude, are you insane? But in this movie, it's pretty basic. It has much more to do with Doc being really, really logical and not wanting to hear about his own future, while Marty wants to tell him. So they have this back and forth thing. And whenever you have a main character and an influence character having differing views on things, one person has to win. Basically, they cannot both be steadfast. Marty cannot always want to tell Doc about the future and Doc say no. One of them has to give in. And in this case, after Marty disappears, we learn that Doc did cave and go by Marty's view and learned about the future. So that's perfect. Next, we're taking a look at the villain, or at least the antagonist specifically. Most would say Biff here, right? Believe it or not, Biff is not the antagonist. The antagonist's role in anything is to be diametrically opposed to the goal of the protagonist. And Biff doesn't care or even know about Marty or Doc trying to get back to the future. So he's not the antagonist. He's more of a contagonist, which is another archetype type of character that basically serves as a speed bump, delaying the main characters from getting where they need to be. The real antagonist is simply time itself, which is running out. That is their enemy. That is the real threat here. But needless to say, perfect points across the board there. Next, we're going to be talking about the end of the film itself, which consists of the climax, which is the 9th thing that we're looking at, and the resolution, which is the 10th and last thing. The climax is one of the most iconic moments of the movie, obviously. It has to deal with the lightning storm, the dance where Marty nearly disappears and dies, and finally getting through and saving the day, getting back to the future. We've all seen it. We all know how it goes. It's a culminating moment in the film through and through. Full points, easily. With a resolution, on the other hand, you want a couple of things. You want a calming down moment for the audience to breathe. That doesn't really have to be that long. And then you need a sense of new norm, right? You don't want it to end in a way where basically they're at the same point in life that they were when the film began. That almost communicates nothing to the audience, right? You want something new, whatever that means for whatever you're watching or reading. In this, you got to see Marty return and find out that his life is better. He's got a new truck. Biff is basically their family's slave for whatever reason. Life is good. The new sense of norm really, though, is the cliffhanger. Something needs to be done about Marty's children, right? In the future. And they speed off, flying into the air because the time machine no longer needs roads. Perfect way to end a film on a new sense of norm. All of these things got perfect points. They thought of everything. And that is why this film is an example of a perfect narrative structure. That's all I got for you guys. Peace.